Make no mistakes, cause he's perfect. Every step I take for his service. So every day I'm living according to his purpose.
I'm Marie Nelson, and welcome to According to His Purpose. My guest today is Dr. Vince Patton the third, but you wear two titles. So you are the Master
Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard, retired.
and you're Dr.
Vince Patton.
the third.
Yes.
Okay,
and then also you can say Reverend.
And Reverend. I'm telling you, he wears so many titles, so many hats. Let's talk about your greatness, your humble beginnings, because you know you're great. You know that. So let's talk about how it all started as a young boy. Who poured into you?
Well, this is probably one of the most fascinating parts of my story.
Okay.
Very few people, or at least people who, other than people who grew up with me, I was a stutterer. I mean, a habitual stutterer.
Wow.
And when I was about 7 years old, I came home with a permission slip to go to see a therapist.
Therapist, yes.
At school, and back then the public school system had therapists on the staff.
Speech therapist.
So I came home with this permission slip for my mother and father to sign, and my stepfather told my mother, don't sign it. And she said, why not? He says, he doesn't need no specialist. And she said, what do you mean? So he looked at me.
Okay.
And by the way, my stepfather was blind.
Wow.
And that's another story in itself.
Yes.
But anyway, he looked at me, he says, sing the national anthem. So I sang the national anthem, and he says, you didn't stutter one bit when you sung it. He says, so I want you to come home from school every day, go out in the backyard, and at the top of your lungs, sing the national anthems. And that moved on to reading pieces out of the newspaper,
right,
to reading the Bible,
yes,
to Motown songs. It kept going on.
Absolutely.
So, but what was happening? It was bringing about this confidence.
Okay.
And that's really what it was. So, so this is where that early life started with me, on confidence.
Okay.
The next part of that was about imagination.
Yes.
And I say about imagination is that I just had this tendency, as all young children do, especially children that grew up in the 50s and 60s like I did, was that you were kind of limited, because when you watch TV or saw the movies, there weren't a lot of us, kind of thing.
Yes.
So you would relegate to looking at, well, I want to be like somebody that looks like me, kind of thing. And I mean, we were just kind of conditioned for that, because it's kind of what it is. And if we had an idea like wanting to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, that it was like a needle in a haystack to find those people.
Oh, I'm sure.
So for me, that moved on. That I went into the Coast Guard right out of high school. And
let's talk about where you went to high school.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay, I'll back up. Okay, so I went to Cass Tech.
There you go.
But here's I went to Cass Tech.
Yeah.
Class of 72.
Second to none.
That's right. So, but the part of the story, which has to do with Cass Tech, also has to do with my oldest brother.
Okay.
You've asked me a question that has a long answer.
Yes.
So my oldest brother, who's 8 years older than I am, Cass Tech, class of 64.
Wow.
He went into the Navy.
Okay.
And he was sending me home all these pictures about his life in the Navy. And I was fascinated with it.
Okay.
And that's when I talk about imagination.
Yes.
The fascination grew into, I want to be like my brother. In all kinds of ways, wanting to be like my brother.
Yes.
So, so on my 17th birthday, so here's how I found out how I ended up in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
On my 17th birthday, I was able to enlist into the military while I'm in high school as a high school senior. And then when you graduate, you go to basic training, or boot camp as we call it. So the day after my 17th birthday, because my birthday fell on a Sunday, November 21st, 1971.
Wow.
And so that Monday, after I got out of school, I went down to the recruiting office at 231 West Lafayette Street.
There you go.
And which was the federal building.
Yes.
In Detroit. And it was this long, narrow hallway where all the recruiters were.
Mm-hmm.
I look down at the end of the hallway. I see a guy in a Navy uniform. He's sitting at his desk. He's on the telephone. The Navy recruiter. I make a beeline for the office. As soon as I walk in, he says, "Have a seat. I'll be right with you."
Mm-hmm.
Well, just before I sat down, I looked at the pictures on the wall. Now, Navy ships are gray.
Yes.
Right? Well, these ships are white.
Okay.
And it said Coast Guard.
Oh.
I walked into the wrong recruiting office. Now, there was a big sign on the door that said Coast Guard.
But that's where you wanted to go.
Well, that's where
you ended up.
That's where I ended up. But I was too embarrassed to turn around and walk out. See, back then the Coast Guard uniform was the same as the Navy uniform.
Okay.
Which is how I made that mistake of seeing a guy in a Navy uniform. So I'm gonna go join.
But
the Navy.
it was a good mistake.
It was a great mistake.
And your career has what? 30 years?
Yes.
Oh, maybe over a little bit over 30 years.
Yeah.
You were over 45,000.
People, yes. So
That's incredible.
So anyway, this story. You got to get the rest of the story.
Okay.
Because I told you asked me a very simple question.
Yes.
I got to give you a long answer.
Okay.
Because here's the imagination part that kicks in.
Okay.
So and how I ended up in the Coast Guard because so I was too embarrassed to walk out. Say, hey, I come to the wrong place. So guy's on the phone. He gets off the phone. I said, I'll talk to him. Meanwhile, while he's on the phone, I'm looking at all of the pictures, which I think are a little fascinating. And this is when imagination starts kicking in.
Yes.
I said, I can see myself doing this because there was some real exciting pictures of things going on in the Coast Guard. And then I come across what is called a unit commendation. What a unit commendation is that if an entire unit does something spectacular, the entire unit will get an award. And every military service has these unit commendations. Well, it just so happens there was a unit commendation hanging up as a display of a rescue that occurred in 1952 off the coast of Cape Cod. In fact, it was such a daring rescue that happened that Disney made a movie about it about 15 years ago called The Finest Hours. Okay. Well, anyway, I read this citation and then I said, wow. And when I said, wow, the recruiter stopped his phone call, looked up at me and said, I guarantee you can do something like that in your first 4 years in the Coast Guard.
And that was it.
That's how I joined the Coast Guard.
Well, you know what? This is incredible. Your life has been incredible. And welcome back to Detroit.
Oh, good to be
because
back.
You are a native Detroiter.
Yes, I am.
Graduate of CASTEC, 72?
72.
Got it. Okay. So now, fast forward. You've got a lot of awards and all kind of things. You did the Lions celebrated you at one of their games recently.
Yes.
You were in the Veterans Parade. Let's talk about that real quick.
Okay. Well, as I moved up the scale, and of course, let's talk about the significance of this rank, Master Chief Petty Officer of the Coast Guard.
Let's do that.
I became the first African American in the history of the U.S. Coast Guard to reach this particular rank. Now, what this rank is that every military service, the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, Space Force, has, you have a senior ranking officer who's a 4-star admiral or a 4-star general, and then there is a senior ranking enlisted person. In the Army, they have the Sergeant Major of the Army. The Navy has the Master Chief of the Navy, and so forth. Well, there's the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, who is the senior ranking enlisted person. That means that you've got the 4-star Admiral, and then you have the Master Chief of the Coast Guard. Not here, but really just even with that person. Because what your job is that you report to the Commandant of the Coast Guard, as well as to Congress and to the President, on matters that impact and affect all the people in the service.
What president did you sit?
I served under 2 presidents.
Really?
Served under Clinton. 2 years of Clinton and 2 years of George W. Bush.
Wow, that
I was
is
selected in
incredible.
'98.
So now, what are you doing now? You've got You have your education is just. I don't know what to say.
Well, that's another
when did you
story.
have time to do all the studying and everything that you've done?
Well, see, this is all part of God's plan, like this, if you want to call it that. Is that I was determined about going into the military, particularly the Navy at the time, because of my oldest brother. My oldest brother went in the Navy because it was education. We couldn't afford college.
Right.
I was from a family of 10 kids.
Are you serious?
And so my brother's way of how he was going to make it was going to Navy, and he did.
Yes.
So that's what I was going to do. Okay. Well, when I got into the Coast Guard, and I kind of didn't think much about college anymore at that point, but college kind of happened on me because my first assignment in the Coast Guard was on a oceanographic ship where we did what were called ocean stations. We went up in North Atlantic. We were doing what we call fisheries patrol, which was making sure that the fish that were being caught by the trawlers and so forth were not endangered. They had limits of what they can catch. Wow. We also tracked icebergs, stuff like that. Okay. So you're out for about 45 days.
Okay.
Not touching land or anything.
Right.
Some of the guys on the ship were taking correspondence courses.
Okay.
And so after about a couple of weeks, I got bored.
Okay.
All I had to do on that ship was I worked in the radio room. I was in communications, and then when you're off, you're off. And you can only watch so many movies. And
exactly.
So I started taking correspondence courses.
Okay, so you went into communication. But you started off as a 911 operator, right?
That's what
from that journey.
Yes.
Okay. So now you're giving back to the community. You're doing a scholarship for the ROTC at Cass Technical High School.
Yes.
And that's coming up real soon. That is wonderful. You've linked up with the Triangle Society. They are some wonderful, wonderful group of women. They work hard. We've got Doretha Evans, Monique Bryant, Terry Berry, and they're even the board. So I'm acknowledging everybody.
Yeah, and a couple of those people on the board are my classmates.
Isn't that something?
That's right.
Isn't that something? So now, what would you tell a young person who has eyes set on maybe going into the military in these days and times with so much going on?
Well, what I would say is there are enormous opportunities in the military.
Yeah.
It's not easy. I will let that be up front first. Mm-hmm. But I think the other part of this is that the challenges that you do in the military sets you up to be able to do just about anything you want to do. Just like from my academic experience, I had no sight about getting a doctorate degree. Right. It just kind of happened. And that's another story for another time. But what I did have was drive and determination that helped me to get to where I was. And the other part of this is that the military, particularly with the Coast Guard, it teaches you about embracing core values. This is what makes you tick. This is what best defines your DNA. To be successful in the military, because you work together as a team, you work in an environment that you have to understand diversity as a whole. I mean, you get people from all walks of life.
Absolutely.
People that come in that have different mindsets. Yeah. I mean, I had different mindsets just as much as
the next person.
Especially that white boy from Kentucky or whatever that saw things differently than what I saw. Yeah. But we all came together and all worked. And the value in that is experience that takes you onto a road that all of a sudden you can do anything.
And it was a good thing for you.
It was a great
because
thing for me.
Look at you.
Well,
you are huge. Okay? And God bless you. And thank you for everything that you have done, your military background, just everything. And you're living out your purpose. And we're doing something that God put us on this earth to do. Absolutely. And that was to serve. Absolutely. And you're doing that.
I'm doing exactly
so that. Mr. Patton, Mr. Vince, with the doctor in front, thank you so much for being a part of According to His Purpose.
Well, thank you.
Keep the great work that you're doing. Keep it up, because I know you're part of many organizations.
I am.
And that's wonderful.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Vince Patton was my guest. And you're going to see him again. Just check the news. Check the news stations. You're going to see him somewhere because he's doing great things. God bless you. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
According to His Purpose is sponsored by Mint Pink Cosmetics and Spa. Be sure to subscribe, like, and click the notification button so you'll never miss out on the up and coming inspirational content. Thanks for watching.